Hey, it's Jeziel here for another episode of A Table Talk, where we give short answers to tall topics. And joining me today, we have the pleasure of having Sally Hewitt from Aging Gratefully with us. Sally, a pleasure having you on the studio or / table. What are you bringing to the table today?
I'm bringing to the table an Aging Gratefully lifestyle.
Okay, this is good.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It's a lifestyle that isn't dictated by a chronological age. It's about living fully right up to the last breath, appreciating getting older. That's the big thing. Just challenging those ageist attitudes and really recognizing that a longer life is actually a privilege that's denied some. And so appreciating the fact that we are growing older instead of fighting it.
So you mentioned the word, it's a lifestyle. Okay, what does that actively look like, an aging gratefully lifestyle?
So it's not being threatened by the chronological age that you are, and actually recognizing that it's more around the energy that you bring to your life. And I particularly focus on being grateful, because gratitude, when you bring your grateful heart to everything in life, it shifts your attitude and your mindset, and that's what we need to do to come up against all these ageist attitudes that we come across, as we're getting older. And we don't need to buy into them. We don't need to. There's so much that we can evolve and develop. And in fact, it's a very exciting time in our lives as we get older, because we get to try new things and remain curious, and being grateful keeps us open to all of that. That's why I'm a big proponent on being grateful.
I definitely need to listen to everything you're saying. My wife is great at being grateful. I tend to go the other way. So I'm going to be paying a lot of attention to every word you say. What are some of the benefits of having this aging grateful lifestyle?
I think one of the biggest, having a grateful heart stops that feeling of entitlement. Because sometimes, especially when we get a bit older, we can think that, we've worked hard in this particular area, so we deserve to have a particular reward in this area. Whereas when we're grateful for what we have in each moment, it actually eliminates all that entitled attitude completely. Being grateful actually gives us a feeling of abundance. It creates an abundant lifestyle, as opposed to, that more narrow feeling of not having enough of. And I'm not actually talking about tangible things. It's very, very much an attitude and a mindset into feeling that what we have right now is enough, and that really fills us up. Doesn't stop us from striving for more or striving to be better. Or it's not about taking away that drive. It's more about the contentment of being in the moment with what you have now as well. Does that make sense?
It does. You're tricking yourself into being happy. Is that could you, by being grateful? This probably the wrong language to use, but you're choosing to look at the positive, and in doing so, makes you a grateful person. The benefits. Is there any stats around the benefits of this?
Very, very much so. There have actually been scientific papers, and there's one particular academic called Dr. Emmons, and he has written books and done research on the benefits of gratefulness. And actually, he said he writes in his book Thanks. He's got a great book, and it's called Thanks. I would highly recommend anybody to read it if they're interested in this. But he said that we have found that when people experience gratitude, they feel more loving, more forgiving, and closer to God. And he actually says that a grateful attitude or a grateful outlook produces emotional prosperity, whereas failing to live gratefully leads to emotional poverty. The other thing I found really fascinating about this is that he says in this book that as humans we have a set point for happiness that we're sort of born with.
Right.
And you know, if something extraordinary was to happen, like you won the lotto, or you know, your mum turned up from New Zealand and you weren't expecting her,
Yeah.
or you know, one of those things, your happiness gauge shoots up.
Yes.
As you become familiar and you get used to whatever that stimulus has been, your happiness gauge will slowly just slot back into its set, your set point. By practicing a grateful outlook and by practicing being grateful and some of the practices, you actually can increase your happiness set point by 25%. It is extraordinary. And it's because actually being grateful it's a learned discipline if you become really serious about it. So it's interesting. It's both a virtue and an emotion. So there's a lot more to it. You know, when we talk about gratefulness and thankfulness, sometimes people think it's very Pollyanna. Okay. You know, like it's just about being happy clappy all the time.
Like I said before, are we tricking ourselves into this? Is this reality?
Whereas actually it's a discipline that and with it being both a virtue and an emotion, it can be a learned experience. And I honestly, I've got this quote that I absolutely love by by Cicero, and he actually said that gratitude is not only the greatest of all virtues, it is the parent of all others.
Wow.
And I think that when we start with the gratefulness and the grateful heart, all the other pleasant emotions that we are wanting seem to blossom from that. But it's bringing that grateful heart, first of all, to the situation. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about this, of course, is we can't be, I think it's absolutely impossible to be thankful for absolutely everything, because let's face it, things happen in our lives.
For sure.
Catastrophes and different traumas, and we will never be thankful for those things. But what I found in my own experience, Jeziel, is that after the event, you know, when something happens, it's very important to work through the grief and the anguish and what, you know, all those heavier emotions that are associated to that particular circumstance. But after the event, when I have found that when I have looked at the situation and brought a more grateful, open heart to the way that I view it, I can pull out pearls for which I can be grateful for. So I'm not grateful for the event, I'm not grateful for the trauma, but I can be grateful for whatever I can harvest out of it.
Yeah, wow.
And in that way, that changes how that I then carry that into my present moment.
That's very cool. So then I guess for those watching and listening, you've got no excuse. Yes, some of us have gone through tougher situations than others, and there could be trauma involved, but it's always a choice, is it? This
choice.
Formula works for everyone.
That's the thing. It's a choice. So I don't know that it's so much we don't have an excuse. It's more about whether we choose to make the choice. But the exciting thing about that, of course, is that it means that we aren't a victim to our circumstances.
I love that.
And I think that's very empowering.
Yeah, for sure. It's an event that happened. It's not who we are. We can choose to be grateful for like you say, you go through it and you can
It's
kind
very
of pull
important.
out
That's a really important part of the process, though, Jeziel. It's really important that we don't use gratefulness to negate any trauma or anything that we go through, any losses, any disappointments, broken dreams, any of those things, they're all valid, and it's important for us to recognize them and allow ourselves to grieve those circumstances.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, so for someone that's watching right now, what's our first step? For someone like me that struggles in this area, what would be some key things that I can start doing now? Some practical steps to try and be a little bit more grateful.
Yeah, and there are. And honestly, everybody knows this, but the reason that this comes up all the time is because it's effective, and that is gratitude journaling.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, before you go to sleep, it's been shown that people sleep better, and sleep is really important for recovery and, everything, just general well-being. It only has to be 3 things that has happened in the day that you are able to feel grateful for. And it can be so small. It doesn't have to be big things, that first cup of coffee, that first cup of tea I have in the morning, I'm telling you, that goes on my list every night.
That's nice and easy. Only 2 more. This is great. Did I have a cup of coffee?
Exactly.
1 more to go. I guess it's whatever, brings you joy, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is exactly the point. It's so personal, and it's exactly what it is that has filled you up that day.
Yeah.
Now, it is so much more beneficial, of course, if you find something different each day,
Yeah.
rather than just repeating the same
Yeah.
thing. Exactly. But it's been shown that is a very good starting point, and there's a story in Dr. Eamon's book about a child who really struggled with sleeping, and they started this practice at night. She was frightened of nighttime monsters and things like that. So they her parents started to do this journaling with her at night. They would think about 3 things that she was grateful for that day, and it really improved her sleep.
Wow.
But of course, at the same time, her parents are setting her up for the most amazing habits for a lifetime.
So true. Yeah.
So that's a great way to start. The other really big thing that we can do to help ourselves is to create this attitude of wonder. Because honestly, creation is just extraordinary.
Oh, man.
And too often, particularly if we always drive the same way or, we live in the same neighborhood, it's so easy to take for granted what we see on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Whereas if we can cultivate this sort of wonder and awe of how we look at things, and looking at things gratefully helps to create that. So it sort of feeds off each other, but you can intentionally decide that you're going to look for things that bring you wonder. And, if you stand and look at the ocean, that's usually what I do.
I'll put the goggles on and go under. Oof, that is unreal under there. So,
and that's that really feeds it too. So they're not necessarily complicated things. The other thing that is really beneficial is to write a grateful message to someone.
Right.
Honestly, and those small acts of kindness. And I'm sure you've experienced this and you know this to be true. Whenever we do anything for someone and we know that it brings them pleasure, how much pleasure does it give us as well?
Yeah, so true.
It's a win-win situation. So something like that, you're acknowledging someone else, which fills their heart, but then that fills your own as well. So
that's awesome.
And that's a really simple thing to do.
Look at that. You can journal 3 things a day. And, of course, you can write a letter to someone. Just go, hey, look, I really appreciate you in my life, or whatever that looks like for you. Yeah. And we're just starting the journey of being or living a grateful lifestyle. Sally Hewitt from Aging Gratefully, thank you so much for your time. Okay, talking to Sally, point number 1. All right, so that's my thankful list. I got 2 more to go. We'll see how well I do. Family, thank you so much for joining us for today's Table Talk. My guest, it is Sally Hewitt. And if you enjoyed our chat, well, we've done ones without me. In fact, Kirsty last week joined Sally. Go check out that. There's a little box you can click on. But until next time, like and subscribe. Sally, thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.